Now, 99% of the people who landed on this video have no clue what I'm about to share, that they're creating vulnerabilities as a service. Now, for the 1% that do know and I offended them, then I apologize and you can move on. But for the rest of you, stay tuned while I cover the top 10 vulnerabilities of vibe-coded apps and what you can do about it to protect yourself and your business. So what is vibe coding? Vibe coding was made popular earlier this year by Andrej Karpathy, as he famously said that he could speak to AI and it would create the app for him. And he coined this phrase called vibe coding. And a lot of people have pressed back on that, but it's too late. The genie's out of the bottle. There's no going back on that term. I guess we're all vibe coding now. But what I need you to understand is with this great speed comes great security risk. And if you're not careful, vibe coding equals vulnerability as a service. So here's where it gets interesting. Look at this quote. Guys, I'm under attack. Ever since I started to share how I built my SaaS using Cursor. Yikes. Look at this other one. Okay, someone is attacking now my database with 1,000 new signups per 5 minutes. Bro, can you please not do that? Thanks. Wow. Well, that's what we're here to talk about today and how to prevent that. The first vulnerability that we'll cover is called insufficient rate limiting. And the risk here is that your APIs or endpoints without rate limits invite denial of service attacks or runaway cost. This has a real world impact. You see, those excessive API calls can bankrupt startups or crash your services. So here's the fix for that. Search my code base for endpoints, missing rate limits, and suggest how to implement throttling on whatever platform that you're on. So for example, if you're on Vercel, then you would say on Vercel to prevent abuse. And your LLM then will know what you're trying to do and it will help you do that. The second vulnerability that we will discuss is called missing access control. So the problem here is that we have unauthenticated or unauthorized access to sensitive pages or APIs, allowing the attacker to bypass your security entry points entirely. So this would be like walking down a street and no one has their door locked at night. Okay? If that is the case, you're just begging for an attacker to walk through that open door and to cause all kinds of damage and havoc. So an example of this would be publicly accessible admin pages or data leaks, sensitive pages that should be protected through access control and they're not. So the prompt fix for this is simple. Audit my app for unauthenticated endpoints and add authentication and authorization checks to protect user data. The next vulnerability that we'll cover is called exposed API keys and secrets. And the risk here is that you have hard-coded credentials in the code or environmental files that you've leaked to public repositories. The consequence of this is severe. You see, hackers can impersonate the app. They can steal your data. They can rack up charges on your credit card for your services. And you wake up one day and all of a sudden you have a $10,000 bill from one of your AI providers or some other API service. Now the fix for this is a simple prompt that looks like this. Find all hard-coded secrets and refactor code to use environmental variables or secure secret management. The fourth vulnerability is called lack of input validation. The most dangerous code is code that trusts its inputs. You see, as a coder, and yes, as a vibe coder, you should not trust any input that you get from the user. The risk here is that your AI-generated code will often skip these critical validation points to sanitize the user input. And this enables a whole class of vulnerabilities. Some common ones are SQL injection or cross-site scripting, XSS we call it, or other types of attacks. Now, these consequences can be severe. Here's just an example. Back in 2017, this became famous, this type of attack, through this company called Equifax. And they had tens of millions of credit cards compromised and caused a lot of damage through an SQL injection attack. More recently, this year, in 2025, just this month, the T app, which is used by women to share reviews of men, was breached. And it was a vibe-coded app, okay? And on this particular case, they found sensitive information and they were able to breach that data. Now, the prompt fix for this is simple. Review all user inputs and add strict validation and sanitization to prevent injection and scripting attacks. Now, the fifth one that we'll cover is no size or rate limits on user uploads. So again, it's about that user input. We need to not trust that as a vibe coder. You see, an unbounded upload is an open invitation for a denial of service attack. The risk here is that if we allow our users to have unlimited file uploads or text inputs, it can exhaust the resources on the server and crash them. We call that a denial of service. It's a very common attack, and attackers will upload massive files and spam the system with all kinds of crazy input just to see if you prevented that. And they'll try to crash those services. Now, the prompt fix goes like this. Implement size and rate limits on all user uploaded content and inputs to protect back-end resources. The next vulnerability that we'll cover is called direct database access from front end. This is an insecure design pattern to allow your front end to send queries directly to the database. That's very dangerous. Instead, we want to filter those queries through a back-end API service before it goes to the database. The security impact is severe. This exposes data and bypasses security layers that you could have put before in front of your database. So the prompt fix goes like this. Ensure database access is only through authenticated, rate-limited back-end APIs, never directly from client code. The next vulnerability is called over-permissioned AI agents and tools. You see, the risk here is that we allow our AI coding assistants to have too much permissions, and they can leak source code or credentials if compromised. So here's just a practical example. An AI agent with read-write access to all repositories could be manipulated to exfiltrate proprietary code. There have been examples of that online. So here's the prompt fix for that. Review AI tool permissions and restrict access to only necessary resources, minimizing attack surface. Number 8, over-reliance on AI without human oversight. You see, the best practice would be that we generate our code. In this case, we use AI to produce the code based on natural language description. And then we review or audit that code with human checks. We always have a human in the loop. That's you. And that you check for security issues and logical flaws. And then you test the security, or you want to verify that with security tools and penetration testing, where you actually try to break the app as an attacker would. Now, the good news is that you don't need to know how to do that. You can ask AI to do that, and I'll show you that here in a moment. And then you want to deploy safely. You want to release with monitoring and an incident response plan so that you can take that system offline if you need to in the case of a breach. All right, so here's some prompt fixes for you. Generate a security checklist and testing plan for all AI-generated code before deployment. Here's another one. Evaluate my code for software vulnerabilities using the OWASP top 10 list and fix the issues. Again, do you need to know what that top 10 list is? Perhaps that would be a good idea for you as a vibe coder to go read up on that. But in the meantime, ask the AI to do it for you. Here's another one. Help me scan my app with, and here's a site here, safevibes.codes, and evaluate it for issues. Okay, and here's an example of what that looks like over here on the right. Okay, and in which case that scanner all you have to do is give it your URL to your application, and it will give you a nice report like this, and it will tell you what the issues are. Number 9, lack of security awareness amongst vibe coders or developers. The risk here is that non-traditional developers, I'm looking at you, may lack the understanding of secure coding principles. As more and more people are vibe coding, it lowers the barrier to entry for those without formal security training. Here's the prompt fix. Provide me with a beginner-friendly security training summary focused on vibe coding risk and best practices. Now, this prompt helps democratize security knowledge, making it accessible to all developers regardless of your background or experience. You see, AI already knows how to do this, but it won't do it unless you ask it to. That's somewhat frustrating, but that's the reality that we live in right now. Number 10, missing continuous monitoring and incident response. Continuous monitoring provides real-time visibility into application behavior. It allows you to detect breaches while they are in the action. Continuous monitoring provides real-time visibility into application behavior, allowing for early detection of attacks before the breach often, and that will allow you to intervene. The risk here is that you have a lack of visibility on that application that's running up in the cloud, and without adequate real-time monitoring, these security vulnerabilities and malicious activities can go undetected. And what happens is often the attacker will play with that system for hours, if not days, until they're able to breach it. And in this case, then you could have detected that if you only had some detection capability in place. So here's the prompt fix for that. Implementing security monitoring and response. So the prompt goes like this. Set up real-time monitoring and alerting for unusual API usage patterns or security anomalies in my app, and provide an incident response plan for identified threats. Just by typing that into your LLM, it will help you in this regard. So just in summary, secure vibe coding is possible. Vibe coding accelerates the development process, and it's very exciting, but it demands a security-first mindset. Use targeted prompts to identify and fix vulnerabilities early. Combine AI speed with human review, audits, and monitoring for safe, scalable apps. If it's worth building, it's worth securing. Are you ready to vibe code securely? Start with these prompts that I've given you today. Follow me on all of my socials. You'll find links in the description. Stay tuned for more news on security of vibe-coded apps and what to do about it. Until then, check out these other videos from my channel. Stay blessed by the best and take care.